Hello, I'm Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions. Thank you for your time. In June of 2020, I started investigating the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, the chapters, and the nonprofit entities. The reason I started investigating the whole Black Lives Matter movement was because I was concerned. I was concerned about the lack of financial transparency and the lack of leadership. As you may recall, Black Lives Matter really gained traction after the murder of George Floyd. You had protests all over the world in response to that incident. As a result, people donated millions of dollars, and some people even say billions of dollars, into Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. As a matter of fact, I was one of the people who was thinking about investing because I just felt as if I wanted to do something tangible in response to the murder and to all of the racist incidents that were occurring during that time and have occurred historically. However, before I invest in any entity, I do my homework. And when I started doing my homework, I was very disturbed at what I learned. The homework that I did or the research that I conducted used the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation website and the websites of all of the chapters and nonprofit entities to really go in and study the layout of the websites, how you donated money, where the money actually went, the leadership structure, the location, and so on and so forth. I was disappointed to learn that no matter how hard I tried, I could not find where the money went. I know where it did not go. It did not go into the Black communities as people who invested the money intended. When I started sharing the results of my investigations, I was called everything but a child of God by some people in the Black community who felt I had betrayed the Black community by speaking truth about the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, the chapters, and the entities. They said things like I was a sellout to my race. They asked me, why would you say something about Black Lives Matter at this time when we need it the most? I was called vicious names on Facebook because I wanted to share the truth about Black Lives Matter. They were shooting the messenger. I was the messenger and I was being shot every time I shared information about Black Lives Matter, every time I shared the truth about Black Lives Matter. You would think those same Black people in the Black community who were criticizing me would be angrier with the Black Lives Matter so called leadership who were mismanaging or embezzling the money. You would think they would be angry that the money never trickled down to their nonprofit organizations or their Black communities as people intended. But as we normally do in the Black community, we hate the person who has the courage to speak up and tell the truth about things that Black people are doing to harm the Black community. Nevertheless, I still reported If you follow me on YouTube, you know I have a series of videos that highlight the information that I learned in my research regarding the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, the chapters, and the entities. All of that's been reported on my YouTube channel under Black Lives Matter investigations. Although some of the things people said about me and to me were hurtful, I knew that the day would come when I would be vindicated. When other people started taking a look, when other people started saying, hey, what happened to my $1,000, my 5,000, 10,000? When these major corporations start raising the red flags about, okay, we are not seeing a return on our tax deductible investment in Black Lives Matter. We don't see any change in the Black community where we thought the money would be used. I knew when the truth came out, I would be vindicated. And the truth is trickling out right now. And that's the basis of this video message, the truth. Not from me, but from Politico. So let's take a look. You're going to learn that what I've been saying all along is true. Black Lives Matter is a big hoax. This is the article that I'm referencing, and I'm going to place the link to the article in the description of this video so that you can read it on your own. But I'm referencing this article, and it says Black Lives Matter power grab sets off internal revolt. At issue is whether grassroots energy can translate to influence inside the Beltway and at what cost. That this person that you're looking at is one of the three founding members of the phrase Black Lives Matter. This is Patrice Cullors, and she is one of the three members that founded the phrase Black Lives Matter. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to transition over to the actual article and just read a few passages from the article just to highlight what I've been saying since June of 2020. So just one moment as I switch screens. Thank you for your patience. As you know, if you've been following me, you know that I like to share information that I glean, and I like to prove the information that I have. I want to prove it to you so that you can see for yourself that what I am saying is true. So I am going to switch over to the actual article so that you can see that I am being truthful about what I am sharing. So just one moment as it comes up. And again, I thank you for your patience. Okay, so now you are looking at the article, and again, it's from Politico. It's from Politico, and you're seeing the article that I just referenced. Now, as I stated, I'm not going to read the entire article because it is quite lengthy, but I just wanted you to see what it says. Now, this article was written by Maya King, and it was reported on December the 10th, 2020. The reason I'm finding out about it now is because Maya King just recently did a segment on NPR in which she talked about this very article and what is going on in the Black Lives Matter movement. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it. The Black Lives Matter movement is buckling under the strain of its own success, with tensions rising between local chapters and national leaders over the group's goals, direction, and money. From the beginning, Black Lives Matter was a grassroots effort born in the streets with no central hierarchy, which I've always said. The idea to keep power concentrated in the hands of its members, the people. And then we go down to that's changing. After a summer of protests that made Black Lives Matter a household name, those atop the movement are making a series of moves to alter its power structure, organizing a political action committee, forming corporate partnerships, adding a third organizing arm, and demanding an audience with President elect Joe Biden. The move, the moves have triggered mutiny in the ranks. 10 local chapters are severing ties with the Black Lives Matter Global Network as the national leadership is known. No, as the national leadership is assumed. There's never been a leadership structure in place. They are furious that Patrice Cullors, its remaining co founder, assumed the role of executive director of the group and made these decisions without their input. Well, how do you like that? She can do that because there's no board governance. There's not a board of directors. There is no leadership. There is no government. So she can do whatever she wants to do. That's a move that, to some, signaled a rebuke of its leaderful structure, which gave every member an equal say. Yeah, right. And kept anyone, including a founder, from overreaching. They fell for the okey doke. It's clear. They fell for the okey doke. They really thought that they could trust someone's word without having anyone to hold them accountable for the word. So they really thought that they had equal input into an organization that three women created without any structure, without any governance, without any accountability. The operations of Black Lives Matter have always been opaque. And we know opaque means you can't see through it, you can't understand it. With thousands of members and dozens of affiliates, two of its three co founders are no longer affiliated with the movement, even as they continue to represent Black Lives Matter on TV. You've seen them promoting their books. Local Black Lives Matter activists say national leaders cut them off from funding and decision making, leaving them broke and taking the movement in a direction which they are fundamentally in which they fundamentally disagree. And as the Black Lives Matter movement grows in influence with millions in donations and celebrity endorsements, local organizers argue they're the ones in the streets pushing for change and they're not getting their due. I've said that from the very beginning. I've said the people in the streets are the ones calling attention to Black Lives Matter, while these founders are traveling around promoting their books, promoting their other business oriented for profit services, using the popularity that the people generate in the streets. And they're not getting anything for it. I tried to tell people that. I tried to tell people that a long time ago. There's been intentional erasure of local activists, said Sherry Dickinson, lead organizers with Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City. People assume that the money is distributed to local chapters. Yes, people who gave money did assume that. Yes, that is not the case. People also assume that when actions are made, that national leadership has the support and agreement from this collective, that what they're saying is representative of us. And that's certainly not the case. This is what I've been saying since last June, that Black Lives Matter is a hoax. Nobody knows where the money is going. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation does not have 501c3 status. It doesn't even have 501c3 status at all. They operate underneath the umbrella of the TIDES network, TIDES network. And that was a recent change in July. They switched from one fiscal sponsor to the next. And now they're with the TIDES network as a fiscal sponsor. But when you go to the TIDES network website and you try to seek out the Form 990 information returns, which is supposed to report revenues and expenses for all of the organizations in which they sponsor, you don't see millions of dollars on the Black Lives Matter. You see a few thousand. So where is the money? I'm just going to read this last little bit, and then I'm going to just put the link in the video so you can read it for yourself. The fallout follows an all too familiar trajectory of other grassroots movements, and how its leaders respond to the call for accountability could have major implications for Black Lives Matter long-term influence. Just as an administration potentially more sympathetic to its goals come into power. The leaders respond to the call for accountability. What leaders? What leaders? There are no leaders. Patrice Cullors came back when the heat came on. When people started questioning, she had already moved forward with her life. But she came back saying, "Oh, I'm the executive director." No, you were not. Because you originally said there would not be any structure. You said structure was not something that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation was going to use. But when people started asking questions, now all of a sudden, you are the executive director, self-appointed. No board of directors in place. You appointed yourself. This is what I've been trying to tell people all along. And I was labeled the bad guy. I was labeled the sellout. Okay. So now maybe since you're seeing this being exposed, you can say, okay, you don't have to say Susan was right, because I know I was right. But at least now you can say, okay, there is an issue. One last paragraph I want to read. And it comes from a statement of the 10 chapters that withdrew from the leadership structure, which is humorous for me because nothing is structured. What did you withdraw from? Saying you were a part of the leadership structure? We became chapters of Black Lives Matter as radical Black organizers embracing a collective vision for Black people engaging in the protracted struggle for our lives against police terrorism. 10 local chapters wrote in an open letter last week with a willingness to do hard work that would put us at risk. We expected that the central organizational entity would support us, chapters, in our efforts to build communally. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? You expected it, but you assumed it. There was no central organizational entity. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation has the blacklivesmatter.com website, but there is no structure. And it concerns me that so many people were blinded into believing there was a structure. When did they invite you to meetings? When did they have meetings to talk with you about anything? So I'm going to click on the 10 local chapters. I'm going to let you see the letter that they wrote, the open letter that they sent out. Let me make sure that I am sharing this letter with you so that you can see it. Yep. Okay. So this is the statement from the front lines of BLM. It's time for accountability. It was recently declared that Patrice Cullors was appointed the executive director of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. Since then, two new Black Lives Matter formations have been announced to the public: a Black Lives Matter Political Action Committee and a BLM Grassroots. BLM Grassroots was allegedly created to support the organizational needs of chapters separate from the financial functions of BLMGN. We, the undersigned chapters, believe that all of these events occurred without democracy and assert that it was without the knowledge of the majority of Black Lives Matter chapters across the country and world. We became Black Lives Matter. We became chapters of Black Lives Matter as radical Black organizers, embracing a collective vision for Black people, engaging in the protracted struggle for our lives against police terrorism, and so on and so forth. And then they list these things. In the spirit of transparency, I just have to laugh. Since when have you been transparent? In a spirit of transparency, accountability, and responsibility to our community, we believe public accountability has become necessary. Well, it's always been necessary. You just didn't honor it. As a contribution to our collective liberation, we must make clear Patrice Cullors, as a sole board member of BLGM, since when did she become a board member? Since when was there a board? So she's the sole board member and the executive director? Okay, anyway. Became executive director against the will of most chapters and without their knowledge. Number two, the newly announced formation, BLM Grassroots, does not have the support of and was created without consultation with the vast majority of chapters. Duh, that's what happens when you don't have structure. They don't have to talk to you. Three, the formation of the Black Lives Matter grassroots effectively separated the majority of chapters from BLMGN without their consent and interrupted the active process of accountability that was being established by those chapters. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. Four, in our experience, chapter organizers have been consistently prevented from establishing financial transparency, collective decision making, or collaboration on political analysis and vision within the BLMGN. Huh. So they prevented you from establishing financial transparency. How can somebody prevent you from establishing financial transparency if that's what you really want to do? It's very simple. Show where the money goes. Five, for years, there has been inquiry regarding the financial operations of BLGM and no acceptable process of either public or internal transparency about the unknown millions of dollars donated to BLGM, which has certainly increased during the time of pandemic and rebellion. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. This is coming from a statement from 10 chapters. For years, there has been inquiry regarding the financial operations of BLMGN and no acceptable process of either public or internal transparency about the unknown millions of dollars donated to BLMGM, which has certainly increased during this time of pandemic and rebellion. That's from the inside. This is what I've been saying since June of 2020. But I'm the bad guy. Number six, to the best of our knowledge, Most chapters have received little to no financial support from BLMGN since the launch. In 2013. It was only in the last few months that selected chapters appear to have been invited to apply for a $500,000 grant created with resources generated because of the organizing labor of chapters. This is not the equity and financial accountability we deserve. So they're saying that since the three ladies founded Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation in 2013, and by the way, it wasn't always called that, but since they founded in 2013, these chapters are saying they haven't gotten any money. And they're saying that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation invited chapters to apply for a $500,000 grant. And I do remember seeing that on the website. They were going to give a $500,000 grant to 10 chapters that met the criteria. I knew right then and there that was not going to happen because what criteria? What criteria? How can you say a chapter meets the criteria when you don't have any criteria set? That was just something to push people off. Oh, they're giving money. They've given $500,000 to 10 chapters. And it never happened. It never happened. Finally, these 10 chapters are saying, we remain committed to collectively building an organization of BLM chapters that is democratic, accountable, and functions in a way that is aligned with our ideological values and commitment to liberation. We will move forward with transparency and expound on our collective efforts to seek transparency and organization unity in a fuller statement in the near future. As we collectively determine next steps, we encourage our supporters to donate directly to chapters who represent the front line of Black Lives Matter. Please forget it. You're done. This is too big. You've lost credibility. It doesn't matter that you're stepping out away from the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. That's irrelevant. You are carrying the name Black Lives Matter as an entity, as a chapter, and it's garbage. You're not going to get the help that you need, not the financial help. This is only the beginning. You wait until these major networks that has given these three founders airtime, they're going to have to clean up their reporting. They're going to have to go back and say, oops, we made a mistake. And you best believe that these major celebrities are not going to have their names affiliated with a scandal like this is going to be. That's not going to happen. So my suggestion to you is to totally change your names. Take Black Lives Matter off of your names and start over with a new name, a clean slate, because you don't have respect and you will not ever have respect in the way that you need it as long as you carry the name Black Lives Matter. I'm going to pause my screen to go back to the beginning. I feel vindicated. I knew that the day would come when I would, but I feel so vindicated now. All of the name calling that I endured, everything was worth it. It was worth it to be able to say, see, I told you so. Black Lives Matter is the big hoax. Thank you so much for your time. And definitely, there's going to be more to come.